Hi, I'm Ken Klee with The Deal, and we're here at M&A Outlook 2009. We've just heard from Jamie Gorelick of Wilmer Hale, formerly of the Clinton Justice Department.
Yes.
And Jamie's given us a preview of what we might expect from the Obama administration, especially on the regulatory front. Now, you've talked about a centrist administration, which nevertheless has some big regulatory priorities that are going to influence anybody who's thinking about making a deal in the next little while. Can you expand on that?
There has never been a time when so many different regulatory structures have been up in the air. The entire financial institution and investment community set of regulations, I think, are in play. They have to be, because we obviously had systemic risk that we didn't recognize. If you look at energy, the environment, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, I could go on. Nearly every sector has very, very significant regulatory changes that just need to happen because of the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
And there's one thing in particular you was interested in getting a little more color on. You talked about a likely bailout of the auto industry. I guess General Motors may be first in line, and some requirements that the government might have in terms of fuel efficiency or environmental progress. Can you, or have you got any further thoughts on how those things might be structured?
Well, the macro point is that if you're going to take government money, the government is going to demand, the people are going to demand some benefit to the people. And so you see in the financial world that the strings that come attached to accepting government money have to do with making mortgages more freely available and working out problems that communities have, constraint on compensation, et cetera. In the auto industry, if the auto industry receives government funds, and we heard Barack Obama yesterday ask President Bush to consider that even now, I think that what will come with that is a desire to accelerate their movement to more fuel-efficient vehicles.
I guess there's still some planning to do as to how you would actually make that request and see that it's followed through.
The problem, of course, has only come upon us very recently, and it's hard to remember, but we're only a week from the election.
Yeah. Back on the financial front, and obviously there's a lot in store in terms of financial regulation. You mentioned in your speech the international component. Now, of course, there's the G20 summit coming up,
yes,
where we're going to have something to say, I guess, to leaders from around the world. Some of whom are kind of upset about the financial crisis, which they perceive to have originated here and to have damaged their economies. Any thoughts on how financial regulation in this country might be affected by the need for international coordination?
Well, as you know, other countries hold off or hold back in their regulation where there is a credible regulator in the home country. And our Fed, our SEC have been viewed as credible regulators. When you have the sort of meltdown that we've had, you could imagine other regulators around the world saying, it's not really comprehensive, is it? And offering, let's say, some friendly advice. If our U.S.-based companies want to continue to have the deference of other countries' regulators and not to have a multiplicity of regulatory regimes that they have to deal with, they have an interest in having a strong and credible regulator here in the United States. And therefore, I think the impetus for that will only be enhanced by this meeting.
Now, let's see. You obviously have some considerable knowledge of antitrust, having been having overseen the antitrust operation in the Clinton Justice Department, if I have that right. You mentioned a sort of different attitude that might be appropriate under the current circumstances towards antitrust issues. Can you fill us in on that?
There are two factors that might suggest a somewhat different approach than you otherwise might have expected in just an ordinary change to a Democratic administration. Number one, clearly the Department of Justice will be considering, and the FTC for that matter, will be considering the impact on jobs of any action that they take in turning down a transaction. So that's an argument that needs to be brought to bear in a way that an antitrust regulator can digest and understand. The second, and I think actually more interesting, is that if you imagine that many startups will get rolled up by the cash-rich companies in their spaces, so big pharma buying startup pharmaceuticals, big technology buying startup tech companies, a regulator has to get out of the reactive mode, which is I'm looking just at the transaction in front of me, and think about what the architecture of the industry might look like if those big players get bigger. Where might any competitive impulses sneak in a way that you wouldn't otherwise imagine it. So the narrow analysis of market share, of dominance, might not be the entire way in which we're going to need to talk to regulators about potential transactions.
So a lot of changes in store on a lot of fronts, and it's only, what, a few days since the election?
Yes.